Good morning, students. In today's class, we are going to begin a new topic, that is chapter 8. The topic of this lesson is how do organisms reproduce? Yes. So before the last topic, that what we discussed is the life process, isn't it? And at the time I told you this should not be included in a life process, though it is a life process. Reproduction is not a mandatory process that is to be called as a life one. Why? Because even some organism, they may appear to be sterile. Sterile, I told you what the meaning for sterility is. Some organism, they may fail to reproduce, and that kind of organism whichever is not reproducing, it's to be called as sterile organism. Some sterile plants are available, some sterile animals are available, even some sterile microorganisms, they do exist. Yes. So this lesson is purely focused how these organisms they reproduce. Yes. So here I made a small mind map of this lesson, that what we are going to see now, that is reproduction is broadly classified into two types based on how the organism they are reproducing and the number of parents they are involved in creating a new organism. One is the asexual organism, the other one is the sexual organism. Once again, now we need to discuss again what that term reproduction refers to. Re, that is again. Production is to make. Now, if you link these two words, you can clearly tell that what this reproduction gives the meaning. That is, again, they are making an organism. Reproduction is the creation of new organism with the involvement of parent, and they are making their own kind. Yes, say for example, if you get a seed of tomato from a tomato plant, and if you are putting it in a soil, then what plant you can expect? Obviously it's a tomato plant. Yes. So reproduction is a process of creating or making their own species again. What for this reproduction is needed? Yes, every organism is, the biological organisms, they have their own lifespan. Yes, we can't tell that we are immortal. Yes, one day we are supposed to kick our buckets, and that is the day is the death day. Yes, but in order to make the life to sustain in this world, yes, what does mean by sustain? Nilaithu nirka, that is what? Continuing. Yes, in order to make any organism to sustain in the world, obviously the organism all should reproduce, which means they are replacing their population in the place. That is called reproduction. Yes, this reproduction is very, very important in terms of evolution. You know what is meant by evolution? Evolution is, in Tamil we call it as what? Parinama Valarchi. That is, we used to tell one story, right? So monkey has come, and from monkey we all emerged. Yes. So that is a term called the evolution. So you are going to have a clear study and a picture about evolution in the next lesson, that is genetics. Yes. So in order to sustain any organism in terms of evolution, the organism should possess two things. Yes. Listen here once again. If an organism wish to continue in the race of evolution, the organism should possess two things mandatorily. Number one is the organism should get adapted to its habitat. The second thing is the organism should do reproduction continuously. Yes, these two things are very, very important for any organism to sustain. Yes, that is all about this introduction, reproduction. Now, next one is asexual and sexual. How they are classifying this reproduction into two types, asexual and sexual. Asexual, which means only one parent is involved, and sexual is two parent of opposite sex involved. Yes. So again telling you students, asexual and sexual reproduction is the two type of reproductions involved. The asexual reproduction, here you see, here for the asexual reproduction to happen, only one parent is sufficient. Yes. So both male as well as female, they can freely reproduce individually, not together. A separate male organism can reproduce separately. A separate female organism can reproduce separately to make their progenies. Yes, but here for the sexual reproduction, it is must that two parents should involve, and that two parents too, they must be opposite in sex. That is, male and a female together they create a new organism. Such kind of reproduction is called sexual reproduction. Repeating once again, as it's a very important topic here. Already you might have learnt in the lower classes, but now it's the correct time for you to understand the concepts clearly. Once again telling you, reproduction, that is again an organism, they are making their own kind. Yes, that is called the reproduction. And now you know that how do organism reproduce. But first I told you why organism they reproduce. Yes, though the title here is how do organism reproduce, but I made you one question and I gave you an answer for that. Why organism they are reproducing? Why organism they reproduce? The thing is, organism in order to sustain themselves in the evolution, they should possess two characters. One is they have the adaptive features. The second thing, the organism should freely inbreed among their population to make their offspring of own kind. Yes, and this reproduction is broadly classified into two types based on the number of parents involved. Yes, in case of asexual reproduction, how many parents are involved? Two or one? Only one parent is involved. In case of sexual reproduction, how many parents are needed to make the sexual reproduction to occur? That is two. That two opposite in sex. That is male and female. See, this X represents cross, which means they are going to reproduce with each other. Yes, here male separately or female separately they can reproduce. Yes, first let us speak about the reproduction in primitive organisms. Like in a life process, I hope you still remember that we started from unicellular organism, right? Here these organisms, even the unicellular organism, they do reproduce. Bacteria, still you see some bacteria are living around us, and even it's going to be with us for next century or next generations even. So which means even that too should continue with its reproduction process, isn't it? So, but you know that bacteria, they are unicellular organisms. Even some primitive organisms like amoeba, they are all primitives, which means they are all unicellular, and some organisms, the bacteria are the prokaryotes, and here some organisms like amoeba, they are eukaryotes. But though they are unicellular, they are reproducing simply by dividing their cell along with the nucleus. Yes, such kind of cell division simply called as the fission. Yes, so most of your primitive organism, they prefer asexual reproduction. And most of your highly advanced or high order organism in your evolutionary chart, they prefer sexual reproduction. Yes. So now it's very clear that the reproduction for the primitive organism like the unicellular, they can be equated with growth. When a bacteria grows, what bacteria do when it grows? When you provide when you provide everything to a bacterial cell, what happens? Say for example, during a curding process, you are given with a milk and you are given with some inoculum of lactobacillus. What you do? You will add the lactobacillus to the milk. Then after some times you incubate that. Then as more nutrients are available, the lactobacillus starts using all the nutrient available in the milk, and they start cell division. Yes, that cell division is also called as reproduction. Yes, so in unicellular organism, growth is equal to reproduction. If you tell that unicellular organism is growing, eventually you can tell that the unicellular organism is reproducing. Yes, that's for your unicellular organism. And for your multicellular organism like plants, fungi and some animals, I have listed and I have grouped these into two major categories. That is asexual reproduction in animals. Yes, here the first thing is the fission, second type is the budding, third type is the regeneration, fourth type is the regeneration and fragmentation, or you can separately write regeneration and fragmentation separately, it's up to you. And this last one is the spore formation, but it is happening in fungus. Don't get confused that I have mentioned this under animals, as I didn't find space for making one more the column. That's the reason I am grouping it as a separate topic here under animals. Once again telling you students, In asexual reproduction for animals, the type involved is the fission, budding, regeneration, fragmentation, spore formation. But spore formation occur mostly in fungi. Yes? And here in case of plants, this is simply called as vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation. P-R-O-P-A, propagation. G-A-T-I-O-N, vegetative propagation. This is of two types, natural means and human assisted. What is meant by human assisted? Assist, which means what? Am I not assisting you in learning? Yes, I am assisting you. உனக்கு help பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்கேன். Yes or no? Likewise, some plants with the help of human beings been getting assisted in making reproduction. Say for example, if you want to grow a drumstick tree, what you will do? Or if you want to grow a tree of your own choice, what you will do? You will take a branch and then you will bring it and you will put it in a soil and you will water it continuously. Yes, only because of you and because of human beings such plants can be propagated. That is human assisted reproduction. That is the artificial method of vegetative propagation. The best example is the advanced method here is the PTC, that is plant tissue culture. This all we are going to see in the forthcoming sessions. Once again telling you, that is reproduction. Now it's very clear that what is reproduction? That producing of their own kind of organism again and again with the involvement of two parents of similar species. That is reproduction, and this reproduction is of two types, that is asexual and sexual. For asexual, how many parents are involved? That is only one. And for sexual reproduction, how many parents are involved? Is two parents of opposite sex. Yes, and the offspring produced as a result of asexual reproduction is identical. What is meant by identical? Identical is same. Say for example, here in asexual reproduction, say for example, you are given with a yellow color rose plant. Yes, you are given with a cutting of the yellow color rose plant. Now you are putting it in the soil as you wait that cutting to take root. Once that the plant starts establishing, what color the rose you can expect from the cutting generated plant? Are you getting my question? Say for example, I have a big or a giant rose color rose plant, yellow color rose plant, and you are provided with a small cutting of the yellow rose plant from me, and once you make the rose plant, a rose cutting to generate root, as the plant keeps growing, now it is about to bloom. What the color you can expect from that cutting? That is yellow, obviously. So the offspring produced, the baby rose plant that you made, the yellow rose plant what you made is also going to be similar like the parental plant here, because it's a reproduction that involved only one parent. Yes, so asexual reproduction brings the organism or the offsprings of same or identical with each other, which means what? They don't have more variation. They don't have more variation. You know what is meant by variation? Vary the difference. The degree of difference among the organism is the variation, isn't it? Say for example, we are all human beings, but we have certain degree of variations. Yes, which means what? How much the dissimilarities we have between the both is called the variation. But here in case of your asexual reproduction, the offspring produced are not that much vary, but you can't tell that it is not having it is not at all having any variation. It do have some variation, but it is very feeble or very highly unnoticeable. Yes, that is all about your asexual reproduction. But here comes the sexual reproduction. As we know that here two parents of opposite sex is involved, so the variation is more when comparing to the asexual reproduction, and the offspring carries the characters of both male as well as the female parent. Yes, so which means what? At times you could see in market that some shades of rose that may exist. Say for example, if you cross a rose plant that bears a red and a yellow one, so probably you could have been generated a new rose that possesses a orange color, which means it's an intermediate color between yellow as well as red. So here two parents of different colors they are involved and they are creating a new offspring that has a combination of yellow as well as red together. Yes. So variation occur here in the sexual reproduction is more. That is the reason though we say for example in a family if if a couple have two children, the two children are the product of their own reproduction, but still they may have more variation because it is a sexual reproduction product of. Yes, fine. And here in the asexual reproduction in animals, I told you the types involved. That is the fission, budding, regeneration, fragmentation. Regeneration and fragmentation, and spore formation in fungi. And here in case of plants, that is simply called as vegetative propagation. Is with this vegetative propagation is of two types. One is the natural method that the plant it itself can manage in reproducing. The second one is the artificial vegetative propagation. It is done with the help of human beings. That's why it's called the assisted reproduction. Is now coming here to the sexual reproduction in plants. The sexual reproducing part of a plant is the flower. Is and for sexual reproduction to occur, an organism should possess reproductive structures, which means the reproductive organs, and inside the reproductive organs there are some specialized cells. They have the ability to carry or inherit the characters from one generation to the next generation through genes. Yes, these carrying information carrying cells present and it's going to be useful for the sexual reproduction is called as the gametes. Yes, and these gametes in case of plants they are called as what? Simply pollen grain and egg, and in case of animals they are called ova and sperm. Yes, so I hope you are all clear with what the thing we are going to see in this lesson is. Now I made certain descriptions here now. That is once again telling you reproduction is making copies of organism of its own kind, and reproduction continue it enhances the continuity of life, and reproduction enhances the inheritance of characters from parents to the offspring, and reproduction involves in copying the DNA, that is a gene and cellular process, and also reproduction promotes survival. This I told you it can be related with evolution. If an organism has to sustain in evolution, they should possess two things. One is to bring more variation, that is called the adaptiveness according to the environment. The second thing is it should freely reproduce to maintain the number of population of the particular organism. Yes. And now we are going to see what exactly the difference between asexual and sexual. I told you already that asexual reproduction involve how many parents? That is only one parent. Is and the sexual reproduction involve two parent of opposite sex. That is male and female. Now you know what this X represents. This X is the cross. That is they are going to reproduce and they are going to make their own offspring. And here the gametes are not formed. As I told you, because gametes are the specialized cells and simply they are called as the haploid cells. Yes, first you should know what is the difference between haploid and diploid. Die in the sense what? 2. Haploid is 1. Say for example, how many pairs of chromosomes we have in our body? 23 pairs. This 23 pairs, from where we got it? That is, father has given 23 chromosome through sperm cells and mother has given 23 chromosomes through ova. This 23 and this 23 combines to form, that is 23 pairs. Now you see this is sperm that has 23 chromosomes and this is egg that has what? 23 chromosomes. So this is the first cell, that is a combination of the sperm and the egg. That process is called fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of male and the female gamete to form the first diploid cell of an organism is called what? that is fertilization, and the first diploid cell what it is formed is the embryo. Yes, what it is formed is the that is a zygote, followed by it's going to convert, I mean it's going to divide to form a group of cells called embryo, embryonic cell. So now it's very clear that this cell has the combination of the chromosome from sperm cell as well as the chromosome from the egg cell. So the resultant formed is a new cell that once again it has got the restoration into 2n. So this cell keeps dividing, and from this cell you see how much the body, I mean how many cells that has been formed through it. Yes, that is the reason we share the character of both the father as well as the mother respectively. So now it's very clear that the sexual reproduction the organism produced will never be identical to its parents, but it may have some good or superior characters than its parents, or some characters they may be hidden. They may be hidden in the ancestral, that such kind of characters are called ancestral characters. They may be expressed on certain organism. That is the reason people used to tell on seeing certain, I mean certain type of children that they may have the trait of their great grandfathers or grandfathers. Why? Because these inheritance they play a great role in expression of certain hidden characters of an organism. So for this all to happen, sexual reproduction they should have the what? Different type of cells. These cells they are carrying their own gene that is called the gametes, and these gametes fuse together to form what? That is the zygote, and zygote later develop into embryo, and embryo later develop into a complete organism. That's what we are going to see here now. Once again telling you, asexual reproduction involves only one parent, that is a product of single parent, and here sexual reproduction involves both the parents of opposite sex, that is male and the female, and here no gamete involvement is needed, but here gamete is very important, and these gametes are sperm and ova, and these sperms and ova are simply the haploid cells because they have half the number of chromosome of an organism. Yes, and during reproduction sperm fuses with the ova and they form the first diploid cell that is called the zygote. Zygote once again restores its chromosome number back to the normal live cell and it keeps dividing to form a new organism, but the genes what the new zygote has got is from two different parents, so they keep expressing both the characters of an organism. Yes, and here the offspring produced are, yes, offspring in reproduction is otherwise called as progeny. Yes, offspring is otherwise called as progeny. The progeny or the offspring produced as a result of asexual reproduction is similar or identical. Just now I told you, when you take a flower that blooms in yellow color, if you take many cuttings of the plant and if you plant it, what color the plant, I mean what color the flower you can expect from that baby plant you raised? Obviously it is yellow. Why? Because here only one parent is involved, but in case of this side the sexual reproduction, if the same rose plant is going to do a sexual reproduction by getting pollen grain from red color flower, the rose flower, then as a result of pollination you could collect some seeds out of the plant, and if you put the seeds, there is no guarantee that the plant will possess either yellow or red. There is a high chance that you may expect that the color may get blended together to form intermediate color ranges. So the progeny formed is not identical to either of the parents. They have their own characters expressed, and we know that the gametes are the haploid cells. They play a very important role in bringing the characters from two different parents during sexual reproduction. Yes. Now I made some diagrams. You see, for asexual reproduction, so far we discussed, right, that is fission, budding, spore formation, fragmentation, even vegetative propagation methods also. First, let us discuss about fission, budding and spore formation clearly with this diagram. And again telling you students, diagrams are very important in this lesson, and definitely you can expect one question as a diagrammatic question from this side, especially the asexual reproduction part. Yes, the first one is the fission. Yes, fission, which means it is splitting in the sense what? It divides into two or many, that is called fission, which means breaking down process. Yes, so fission is of two types based on how many cells are produced at the end of asexual reproduction. The phase, you see, the fission is broadly divided into two, that is binary fission and multiple fission. Bi, you know that it is 2. Multiple, it is more than 2 to infinite. Is the first diagram represents is amoeba. Amoeba, they do a process of binary fission for completing its asexual reproduction. You see, first amoeba, as once it gets matured, the nucleus of the amoeba starts splitting. Yes. So again and again telling you students, first the nucleus they should divide, followed by the cytoplasm they are dividing. So the process of splitting of nucleus into two daughter nuclei is called karyokinesis. Karyo, which means nucleus. Kinesis, which means it is to produce or synthesize. So the first step involved in the binary fission in amoeba is, the first step is the splitting of nucleus, followed by, you see, the cytoplasm, they keep splitting is in a congruent manner. So now the product that formed as a result of this is the what, two daughter amoeba cells. Now you see here, these two daughter cells are the product of this mother cell, but you can't tell among these two is which one is the mother and which one is the daughter. So here the parental identity is completely get lost. Which means again telling you students, in this two amoeba produced as a result of this binary fission, can you tell which one is the parent amoeba, which one is the daughter amoeba? No, you can't tell that. Why? Because it is exactly different. So that is the reason in some texts it may be given that amoeba is an immortal organism. Is fine. Next one is the multiple fission. Is this multiple fission, you see here, by seeing the diagram itself you can guess it clearly. Is this multiple fission that is been followed by plasmodium. Is this plasmodium, you see the same like amoeba, and moreover this too is a protozoa, but here instead of getting splitted into two, the nuclei during karyokinesis, but for this multiple fission it has been divided into many n number of fragments, and each fragmented nuclei gets encircled or surrounded with its own cytoplasm. So they form typically called as the cyst. This cyst possesses many daughter cells. Here it is giving only two daughter cells as a product of binary fission, but in case of plasmodium, and due to the result of same like the fission, the daughter cell produced their n number, that is they are many in number. Is so that is the reason again telling you, see here fission is of two types, binary fission and multiple fission. In case of binary fission, the number of the number of organism or the offspring produced as a result of binary fission is 2. But here the number of organism produced as a result of multiple fission is more than 2 to infinity. Yes. And the common thing is the first step involved in the fission is the karyokinesis, and the last step involved is the cytokinesis. Is first the nuclei should get splitted, then followed by the cytoplasm should get splitted properly. Yes, I hope it's very clear for you. And one more example it is given in the binary fission is leishmania. But unlike amoeba, leishmania, they divide themselves into longitudinally. But the leishmania causes a disease called Kala Azar. Yes. The next one is budding. Budding, again telling you, budding can be divided into two basic categories based on whether the bud or the new organism keeps attached to the parental organism or the new organism gets detached from the parental organism. Again telling you students, budding, which means a new organism tends to develop and it gets nourishes by the mother till it grows to a considerable size, and after that size has been reached, whether that new organism detaches from the mother organism and are they going to lead the separate life, or they may remain attached to the parental cell and they may keep growing accordingly to that. Yes. So continuous and discontinuous. We know that continuous, which means what? It keeps growing attached to the parental cell. The best example here what we are going to discuss is yeast, and here the discontinuous is hydra. Yes. So now you see it's a yeast cell, and the yeast cell prepares by getting more nutrient and the and the favorable environment for making the organism to produce bud. And now what you see here is a small bud that develops on the surface of the yeast, and this bud keeps growing and it is reaching the considerable size of maturity. And once that you see here again, this bud organism now it has got matured and they started making one more bud and it keeps growing like a chain. And once after reaching considerable size of chain, they may break unevenly but not, they are detaching equally into separate cells. Again telling you students, once the chain keeps growing, they may get detached but not as an individual cell. Yes, they are getting fragmented and they keep growing as a new organism. Yes, this is all happening in yeast. It's a continuous manner. Here the parent identity is remaining. So now you can clearly tell that this is the parental cell and this is the parental cell and this is the parental cell and this is the daughter cell that developed, and this is the parental cell and the daughter cell has produced a new daughter cell. Yes, so here you can clearly tell which one is parent and which one is offspring. But here you see the parent identity is completely lost. You can't tell which one is the parent and which one is the offspring here. Is the same thing here. That's a discontinuous. Discontinuous in the sense what? Once after reaching considerable size, they are going to get detached and they are going to relocate to a new habitat for its growth. That is by Hydra we are going to see here. That is, you see Hydra. We know that Hydra, what's the habitat of Hydra? It's an aquatic organism and it has a tentacles. What you see here is the arm. They have a stinging cells called tentacles, right? Last year we have studied. And this is the mouth, and we know that Hydra, they don't have anus. So it's a opening through which it takes food and it leaves out the waste through it. Yes? Once the Hydra prepares for its reproduction, it is going to have a small protrudent in the side that is called the bud development, and the bud gets nourishment from this Hydra and it starts developing to a considerable size. And once it reaches the considerable size, it starts getting detached, which means it broke off from the mother Hydra and it may get landed to the new substratum, the place where it's going to anchor itself and it's going to grow into a new organism. Yes, that's all about your what? Budding. Again telling you, budding is a process of nourishing a new organism when it is too young for the organism to survive it individually. So that is of two types. In this continuous, even after they are reaching the considerable size, they keep attached to the mother organism and they keep reproducing along it. But in case of discontinuous, once they reach the considerable size, what happens? They get detached and they may land to a new area and they can have an individual life. That's all about your budding. But here in case of your budding, the parental identity remains. Here it is not lost, but here it is completely lost. You can't tell which one is the parent and which one is the offspring in case of fission, but in case of budding, you can tell which is the offspring and which the offspring produced parent. You can tell them clearly. Is next one is spore formation. First, we should know what is spore. Spore is like a micro seed. It is not seed, but it do the function of seed. Okay, for primitive animals or primitive organisms. Yes, even some bacteria, they may produce endospore at times. So spore, they have a protective wall and the cell content will will keep inside so safely so that it can sustain during unfavorable conditions. What is unfavorable conditions? When temperature is elevated or when temperature is sub-zero. So, or when the water availability is very less, or when water availability is more, or when food is not available. So, these are the factors, they can induce stress to an organism. When an organism is subjected to stress, in the abiotic manner, then that environment is the unfavorable environment. So, during unfavorable environment, these fungus, that is a rhizobus. The example that what we took for studying the spore formation is rhizopus. Rhizopus produce more number of spores. Okay, in a sac-like thing called sporangium, 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 and the spore produced are simply called as sporangiospores. Again, telling you students, fungus, they reproduce mostly with a kind of spore. Is these spore produced in a fruiting body that is called sporangium. Sporangium abdingiradhu, it's a sac like thing that has more spore inside it. Is the sac that holds the spore is called a sporangium, and the spore that is present inside the sporangium is called sporangiospores. This sporangiospores, when the sporangium breaks or bursts to open, they may release millions and millions of spores, and the spores, they are very, very lightweight, and they can be taken to a very long distance because they are tiny and less weight. And moreover, as they have a very thick cell wall, the inner content of the cell can be what? Can be preserved properly, and even they can resist the environmental stress. Once they land to a favorable place where the moisture, temperature and food availability all will be all in a proper range, then the cell wall breaks and the spore, they may germinate and they may take up into a new organism. Yes. So once again telling you, let us have a small recap the things that what we discussed from the beginning till now. We discussed in this class what is reproduction, then what are all the thing that reproduction covers, and the types involved in reproduction, that is sexual and asexual. And again we studied how unicellular organism they reproduce, and how multicellular organism like plants they reproduce asexually and sexually, how multicellular organism like animals they reproduce asexually and sexually. And now we are very clear that the asexual reproduction in animal, the method like fission, budding, spore formation. And in the forthcoming class we shall continue with fragmentation, vegetative reproduction, and followed by animal reproduction, that is a sexual reproduction in human beings, and followed by the contraceptive methods. And then next to that we shall continue in learning the plant reproduction and its types. Thank you, students.